A billionaire walked into his own company. Nobody recognized him. For 63 minutes, Robert Williams sat in the lobby of Williams Energy Systems, the $65 billion empire he'd built, wearing a cheap suit and a visitor badge. Executives mocked him through glass walls, called him another nobody, a warehouse lifer who didn't belong, what they didn't know. While they laughed, two men Robert trusted were selling his company for $27 billion under value, pocketing $85 million in personal kickbacks, destroying everything his dead best friend had died building. 6 minutes after Robert stood up and walked into that conference room, both executives were fired. This is the story of what happens when a founder stops hiding from grief and starts fighting for what matters. The kitchen smelled like burnt toast and regret. Robert Williams stood at the counter in a flannel shirt that had seen better decades, gray at the temples. 52 years breathing, 5 years running. His daughter sat at the table pushing scrambled eggs around her plate, like evidence she didn't want to examine. Emily. 16. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than she was. Eyes that looked older than they should. She hadn't spoken in 4 minutes. Robert knew because he'd been counting. The silence stretched, filled the room, pressed against the windows of the Boulder cabin until the morning light felt thin. Finally, Dad. Her voice came out flat. A stone dropped in still water. Can I skip school today? Robert set down the spatula, turned, studied her face the way he used to study quarterly reports, back when numbers mattered more than they should have. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for weeks. Bad day yesterday. Emily's jaw tightened. A muscle Robert recognized because it was his own. The Williams family trademark. The thing that happened right before someone either told the truth or lied about it. She chose truth. Kimberly's group called me failure daughter again. The words landed soft but cut deep. Robert felt the old familiar ache behind his ribs. The thing that used to show up during board meetings when someone questioned his decisions. Except this wasn't business. This was his daughter getting shredded by teenage cruelty because of choices he'd made 5 years ago. They saw the article. Emily's voice stayed level, but her knuckles went white around the fork, the one about you quitting your company. Forbes reposted it yesterday. Where are they now? Tech founders who walked away. Your picture's right there under a headline that says the billionaire who gave up. Robert exhaled slowly. Of course Forbes reposted it. Of course Kimberly found it. Of course high school was a blood sport disguised as education. I didn't quit, Em. I stepped back. There's a difference. Emily looked up, met his eyes. And for half a second Robert saw his late wife staring back at him. Sarah had that same look. The one that said, I love you, but I'm calling your bullshit. Tell them that. The challenge hung in the air. Robert wanted to say something profound, something fatherly. Something that would make a 16-year-old girl believe that integrity mattered more than Instagram likes and cafeteria status. Instead, he said what he always said. You want pancakes instead? Emily almost smiled. Almost. Pancakes won't fix Kimberly, Dad. No. But they taste better than burnt toast. This time she did smile, small real progress. They ate in silence for another 10 minutes. Robert watched his daughter not eat pancakes the same way she'd not eaten eggs. Emily scrolled her phone, frowned, put it face down on the table. The gesture said everything. Whatever Kimberly had posted this morning, it wasn't good. Robert wanted to ask, wanted to see, wanted to march into that school and remind every smug teenager that their parents' money didn't make them untouchable. But he didn't, because 5 years ago he'd learned the hard way that showing up angry solved nothing. His phone buzzed on the counter once, twice, 7 times in rapid succession. Robert ignored it. Probably board updates he no longer cared about. Probably market alerts for a company he'd walked away from. Probably. The 8th buzz came with a different tone. Meme, not just any email. The sound Robert had assigned to his private account. The one only 4 people on Earth had access to. The one he checked maybe twice a month because anyone who mattered knew not to use it unless the world was actively ending. Emily noticed his expression. You okay? Robert forced his face into neutral. Fine. Just work stuff. You don't do work stuff anymore. True. Too true. Robert grabbed his phone. Glanced at the sender field, unknown subject line. You need to see what they're doing while you're not watching. His thumb hovered over the delete button. Spam. Had to be spam. Nobody had this email address except. He opened it. The message contained exactly one sentence. You need to see what they're doing while you're not watching. Below that, 22 attachments. Robert's pulse kicked up half a notch. He clicked the first file, PDF, corporate letterhead, Williams Energy Systems, his company. The company he'd founded 17 years ago with his best friend Michael Johnson in a rented warehouse outside Denver. When nobody believed grid-scale batteries could actually work. The company he'd walked away from 5 years ago because Michael died and Robert couldn't breathe inside that building anymore. The company currently being run by 2 men Michael had personally trained. Christopher Hernandez as CEO, Daniel Lopez as COO, both brilliant, both loyal. Both Robert's eyes scanned the document term sheet. Continental Fossil Holdings acquisition proposal. He scrolled. Numbers jumped out like accusation. $38 billion purchase price. Williams Energy's actual market valuation according to last quarter. $65 billion, a $27 billion discount. Robert's hand tightened around the phone. Dad? Emily's voice came from very far away. You look weird. Like stroke weird. Robert set the phone face down on the counter with exaggerated care. The kind of care that meant his hands wanted to throw something through a window, but his brain knew better. I'm fine. You're lying. Perceptive kid. Sarah would have been proud. Robert turned, forced a smile that felt like broken glass. Finish your pancakes. I'll drive you to school. Emily studied him for 3 long seconds, then shook her head. I'll take the bus. She stood, grabbed her backpack, paused at the kitchen door. Dad, whatever that email is. Whatever's wrong. You can't just ignore it this time. Robert opened his mouth to argue. Emily cut him off. You've been ignoring things for 5 years, and I get it. I do. Mom died. Uncle Michael died. You were drowning. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she powered through. But I'm not drowning anymore. And you shouldn't be either. She left. The front door clicked shut. Robert stood alone in a kitchen that suddenly felt like a museum dedicated to all the ways he'd failed the people he loved. He picked up the phone, opened the email again, started reading. The next 3 hours disappeared into a black hole of corporate documents and mounting rage. Robert sat at the oak table Sarah had picked out 12 years ago, back when the Boulder cabin was supposed to be a weekend getaway, before it became a full-time hiding place. Attachment after attachment painted a picture so clear it could have been a photograph. Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez, the 2 men Robert had trusted with Michael's legacy, had been negotiating a sale to Continental Fossil Holdings for 11 months. 11 months, nearly a year of secret meetings. Encrypted emails, financial projections carefully manipulated to make Williams Energy's renewable division look unprofitable. The term sheet was dated 6 weeks ago. But the real knife came in attachment 7. Personal compensation agreements. Christopher, $85 million exit package. Contingent on sale completion Daniel, board seat at Continental Fossil Holdings. $12 million consulting contract. Both contracts signed. Both hidden from the board. Robert technically still chaired despite his 5-year absence. Robert scrolled to attachment 11. Tenor memo. Daniel to Christopher. Dated 18 months ago. Subject. R&D strategy adjustment. The memo outlined a systematic plan to defund Williams Energy's research division. Redirect budget to consulting fees that. Robert cross-referenced attachment 14. Flowed to shell companies Daniel and Christopher controlled. $47 million in total. Stolen, not borrowed. Not reallocated. Stolen. Robert's hands shook, not from fear, from the kind of anger that came with absolute moral clarity. He opened attachment 22, a single-page summary. Timeline. Evidence trail. Breadcrumb path leading from Continental's first approach all the way to next Monday's planned public announcement. The sale was happening in 5 days, unless someone stopped it. Robert stood, walked to the garage, opened the door to his workshop. The space smelled like motor oil and sawdust. 17 years of weekend projects lined the walls. A half-restored 1968 Ford pickup sat in the center bay. Robert had been working on it since Sarah died. Engine rebuilt, transmission replaced. Body still needed paint, but the frame was solid. Fixing things you could hold in your hands turned out to be easier than fixing the things you couldn't. Robert opened the glove compartment. Inside, a blue ballpoint pen, cheap plastic, practically worthless. Michael Johnson's pen. The pen Michael had used to sketch their first battery prototype on the back of a pizza box in 2009. The pen Michael had kept in his shirt pocket during every investor meeting. The pen Michael had left on his desk the day his heart gave out at 45 years old. Robert picked it up, held it like a relic, which is exactly what it was. Michael's voice echoed in his memory. Words from a conversation 7 years ago. 3 months before the heart attack. 6 months before Williams Energy went public. They'd been sitting in Michael's office. Late night. Robert had just signed the IPO paperwork. Michael had leaned back in his chair, spun his blue pen between his fingers. You know what scares me, Bobby? Robert had looked up from the contracts, the valuation, the pressure, the success. Michael's face had gone serious. Success scares me. Because success attracts the wrong kind of people. People who care about money more than mission. People who'll smile at you during board meetings and sell you out the second the price is right. Robert had laughed it off. That's why we have Section 17. Michael had nodded slowly. Section 17. The founder override clause. He'd tapped the pen against the desk. Promise me something, Bobby. If I'm ever gone, if something happens, if you walk away and the company starts drifting, promise me you'll come back. Promise me you'll pull that fire alarm. Robert had promised. Easy promise to make when you never think you'll need it. Standing in the garage 5 years later with Michael's pen in his hand and 22 attachments worth of betrayal on his phone, Robert finally understood. Michael had seen this coming. Michael always saw things coming. Robert checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. He'd been reading for 14 hours. The house was dark. Emily had come home from school, made dinner, eaten alone, gone to bed. Robert hadn't noticed. He walked back inside, climbed the stairs, stopped at Emily's door, light off. Door cracked open the way she'd kept it since she was 7 and afraid of nightmares. Robert pushed it wider. Emily lay on her side, headphones in, phone glowing in her hand. She saw him, pulled out one earbud. You're still up. Her tone suggested this was not a compliment. Robert leaned against the doorframe. I need to take a trip. Emily sat up, studied his face. Whatever she saw there made her expression shift from annoyed to concerned. Where? San Francisco. Emergency business. You don't do business anymore. For the second time in 12 hours, Emily called his bullshit. Robert almost smiled. I'm making an exception. Why? Because 2 men I trusted are selling the company Michael died building. Because I've been hiding in this cabin for 5 years, while the thing we created rotted from the inside. Because my daughter gets called failure daughter at school, and maybe I actually am one. Robert didn't say any of that. Instead, because it's time, Emily swung her legs out of bed, stood, crossed to where Robert leaned. She was almost as tall as him now. When had that happened? Dad, whatever you're about to do, whatever that email was, just don't come back different. Robert frowned. Different how? Like you did after Uncle Michael died. Like the lights went out and you forgot how to turn them back on. The words hit harder than any corporate memo ever could. Robert reached out, pulled his daughter into a hug. She resisted for exactly half a second, then melted into it. I'm not going dark, Em. I'm going to fix something I should have fixed 3 years ago. Emily pulled back, looked him dead in the eye. Good. Because Kimberly's dad texted me tonight. Robert's blood pressure spiked. Kimberly's dad has your number? Kimberly gave it to him. He wants to meet. Says his daughter has been traumatized by my aggressive behavior. Bess, you punched her? Not yet. But I'm considering it, despite everything. The emails, the betrayal, the theft, the rage. Robert laughed, actually laughed. Emily grinned. Go fix your company, Dad. I'll handle the high school mean girls. Robert kissed the top of her head. Deal. The 6 a.m. flight to San Francisco was half empty. Robert sat in coach, window seat, no laptop, no briefcase. Just a worn leather folder containing a single piece of paper, and Michael Johnson's blue pen, the man next to him. Mid-30s, expensive suit, AirPods in, glanced over once. Took in Robert's faded navy blazer and scuffed boots. Dismissed him as nobody worth networking with. Robert was fine with that, baying nobody had advantages. He pulled out his phone, opened the boarding pass name. Michael Barnes, fake name. Real ticket. Purchased with cash through a third-party site that didn't ask questions. Robert Williams, the billionaire founder, was staying in Boulder. Michael Barnes, the middle-aged nobody, was going job hunting. The plane took off. Robert closed his eyes, let his mind drift back to the last time he'd walked into Williams Energy Systems headquarters. 5 years ago, 3 weeks after Michael's funeral. 2 days after Emily asked why Daddy cried in the car every morning on the way to work. Robert had sat in the parking garage for 40 minutes that day. Engine off. Hands on the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. He couldn't do it. Couldn't walk past the security desk where Michael used to stop every morning to chat with Patricia Thompson about her grandson's baseball games. Couldn't take the elevator to the 58th floor where Michael's office sat empty. Couldn't pretend he was okay when every hallway smelled like loss. So he'd called Christopher Hernandez. Chris. I need to step back. Christopher's voice had been perfect. Concerned. Supportive, Bobby. Take all the time you need. Daniel and I will handle operations. You focus on Emily. On healing. The company will be here when you're ready. 5 years later, Robert finally understood what Christopher had actually meant. Take all the time you need. We'll be busy selling everything you built. The plane landed at 9:12 a.m. Robert took a cab to the financial district, got out 2 blocks from Williams Energy Systems headquarters. The tower rose 62 floors into the San Francisco morning. Glass and steel. Modern. Imposing. Robert had chosen this location himself. Spring of 2015, the week after Michael's funeral. Back when building something permanent felt like the only way to make death feel less final. He stood on the sidewalk, looked up. The company name stretched across at the top floor in brushed steel letters, 3 feet tall. Williams Energy Systems. His name, his company, his legacy being sold for parts by men who smiled at Michael's funeral and promised to protect what he'd built. Robert checked his watch, 9:47 a.m. 13 minutes early for the 10 a.m. General Operations interview. He'd scheduled under his fake name through the online portal. He walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was exactly as Robert remembered. High ceilings, polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the space with natural light. Different in one crucial way, the energy was wrong. 5 years ago, this lobby had hummed. Engineers arguing over coffee, interns laughing, security guards greeting employees by name. Now it felt like a bank quiet. Efficient, cold. Rob approached the reception desk. Patricia Thompson sat behind the counter. Same silver hair, same small gold brooch at her collar. Same kind eyes that had watched this company grow from 30 employees to 4,000. She looked up, their eyes met. For exactly half a second, something flickered across Patricia's face. Recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by the professional smile of a woman who'd greeted 10,000 strangers. Good morning. How can I help you? Robert's pulse kicked up. She knew. Patricia knew exactly who he was, and she was choosing silence. I'm here for the 10 o'clock interview. General Operations position. Patricia's fingers moved across her keyboard. Name? Michael Barnes, she typed, paused. Her eyes flicked back to his face. Another microsecond of recognition. Then professional mode snapped back into place. I have you in the system, Mr. Barnes. Please have a seat in the waiting area. She gestured to a cluster of chairs near the windows. Someone will be with you shortly. Robert took the visitor badge she offered. Plastic lanyard. Temporary ID with Gakes printed in red. He'd worn one of these exactly once before. September 2009. First day in the building. Back when Williams Energy was 12 people and a dream. 17 years later, he was back to being a guest. The irony tasted like copper. Robert walked to the waiting area, sat in a chair by the window, and waited. The first 10 minutes were easy. Robert watched the lobby, took mental notes, employee traffic, body language, energy levels. Everything screamed slow death. People moved fast but without purpose. Eyes down, no conversations. The kind of corporate culture that happened when leadership cared more about metrics than mission. Mom in 11. A junior associate walked past, mid-20s. Suit that cost more than Robert's car. Expensive watch. Robert caught his attention. Excuse me. Do you know when someone from HR might? The associate cut him off without breaking stride. If you're scheduled, someone will get you eventually. No eye contact, no apology, just dismissal. Robert sat back down. Note the interaction. Minute 19. 3 engineers walked by in a cluster. Robert recognized one. Linda Brown, VP of Engineering. 42. Brilliant. Had presented Robert with the patents for their 4th-generation battery 18 months before he left. Linda's eyes swept past him like he was furniture. No recognition, no acknowledgement. Robert was a ghost in his own building. Mine 27. Movement behind the glass wall separating the lobby from the executive corridor. Conference Room A, the senior leadership team. Robert could see them through the transparent partition. 11 people around a walnut table. Christopher Hernandez at the head. Charcoal suit. Perfect hair. Rolex catching the light. Daniel Lopez 2 seats down, leaning back. Feet on the table. Laughing at something Christopher said. 8 other executives, all watching Christopher like he was the sun, and they were plants desperate for light. Robert's jaw set. Min 34. A junior executive leaned against the glass door, loud enough for his voice to carry. Another nobody sent up from the lobby. 40-something. Cheap suit. Probably some warehouse lifer who thinks reading LinkedIn articles makes him qualified for tech. Laughter from inside the conference room. Christopher's voice. Smoother than it should be. We get 10 of these a week. People who watched one TED talk about renewable energy and decided they're visionaries. More laughter. Daniel's voice. Sharper. The kind of person who shows up thinking passion matters more than competence. The junior executive grinned. Should I tell HR to ghost him? Give it another 20 minutes. Then send security to escort him out. Politely, the group laughed again. Robert sat very still. Every muscle in his body screamed to stand up. Walk across that corridor. Push through that glass door. Watch Christopher's face drain of color when he realized who he'd just mocked. But Robert didn't move because this exact moment was why he'd come, not to confront, to witness, to see with his own eyes what his company had become when he wasn't watching. The answer was clear, rotten, arrogant, cruel, everything Michael had warned him about. Robert pulled out his phone, checked the time, 10:47 a.m. 63 minutes since he'd sat down. 63 minutes of being invisible, of watching junior executives mock applicants, of seeing engineers walk past without kindness, of hearing Christopher Hernandez, Michael Johnson's protege, the man Robert had trusted with everything. Lore about people who cared about passion over profit. Robert's phone buzzed. Doc text from Emily Dad. Kimberly posted that article again, with a new caption, "When your billionaire dad is too broke to keep his company. Everyone's seen it. I told her you didn't fail." She laughed at me. Robert stared at the message. His daughter was defending him at school while he sat in a corporate lobby being treated like trash. The math was simple. Stay seated, safe, smart. Let the lawyers handle it through proper channels. Stand up, dangerous, impulsive, personal. Robert thought about Emily, about Sarah, about Michael, about the blue pen in his jacket pocket and the promise he'd made 7 years ago. If the company starts drifting, pull the fire alarm. Robert stood, smoothed the front of his old navy blazer, started walking toward the glass corridor. Patricia Thompson watched from the reception desk. Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes looked almost like approval. Robert crossed the marble floor, 30 feet to the corridor. 2010, the glass door to conference room A loomed ahead. Through the transparent wall, Robert could see Christopher mid-sentence, gesturing broadly, playing to his audience, Daniel laughing, the other executives smiling like courtiers. 5 feet, Robert's hand touched the door handle. Someone inside noticed, a junior executive. Same one who'd leaned against the glass earlier. He half stood. Sir, this meeting is closed too." Robert pushed through the door. 11 heads turned. The junior executive's protest died in his throat. Robert walked the length of the conference room, past the junior staff, past the senior VPs, straight to the head of the table where Christopher sat. Robert set his leather folder on the polished walnut surface. The sound, folder meeting wood, carried in the sudden silence like a gunshot. Christopher looked up. His face registered nothing at first, just the blank corporate politeness of a man interrupted mid-performance. Then recognition started, slow, like watching ice crack. Christopher's smile froze, his eyes widened, color drained from his cheeks in real time. "Bobby?" The name came out uncertain, like Christopher thought he might be hallucinating. Robert said nothing, just stood there. Old Navy, scuffed boots, visitor badge hanging from a plastic lanyard, looking exactly like what he was. A ghost, a founder returned from the dead. A reckoning. Daniel Lopez pushed back from the table. Stood. Voice sharp. "Who let you in here?" Christopher's hand shot out. "Grip the edge of the table, Daniel." Wait, but Daniel was already moving. Already reaching for the intercom panel on the wall. "This is a private executive briefing. I don't know how you got past the lobby, but you need to leave. Now." He pressed the button twice. A calm voice crackled through the speaker. "Security, conference room A. We need someone removed from the building immediately," the voice responded. "Officers dispatched." ETA 40 seconds. Daniel turned back to Robert, crossed his arms. Radiated the kind of corporate authority that came from 5 years of unchallenged power. "I'm giving you 10 seconds to walk out of here voluntarily, but this becomes a legal problem." Robert still hadn't spoken. He just looked at Christopher, watched the man's brain work through the impossible math. Bobby Williams was in Boulder. Bobby Williams hadn't set foot in this building in 5 years. Bobby Williams was a grieving hermit who'd walked away from everything. This couldn't be Bobby Williams. Except it was. The conference room door opened. 2 security officers entered, both mid-40s, calm, professional. The kind of men trained to de-escalate situations without violence. The taller one stepped forward, raised an open hand toward Robert's shoulder, not threatening. Just the universal gesture for "come with me, sir." Robert lifted his own hand. Slurtious, something in the gesture. The absolute confidence, the lack of fear, made the security officer pause, made him look at Robert more carefully, made him glance at his partner with sudden uncertainty. Robert reached down, opened the leather folder, withdrew a laminated card roughly the size of a passport, placed it face up on the walnut table. Between Christopher and the coffee cup, Christopher wasn't drinking anymore. Nobody in the room breathed. Christopher leaned forward, read the card. The color that had drained from his face didn't return. It got worse. Daniel stepped closer, looked over Christopher's shoulder. Whatever he saw there made him stop moving entirely. The card was simple. White background, blue border, embossed seal, Williams Energy System S under identification name, Robert James Williams. Title, co-founder, controlling shareholder. Issue date, March 2009. Contagion code, GUSF 001-209RJW17. Signed in blue ink, Robert J. Williams, Michael D. Johnson. Only 2 such cards had ever been issued. Michael's had been retired and sealed in the company archive after his death. This was the other one. Robert spoke for the first time since entering the room. His voice was low, measured, carried no heat at all. My name is Robert Williams. I co-founded this company in 2009 with Michael Johnson. I am the controlling shareholder of Williams Energy Systems. I have been sitting in your lobby for the last 63 minutes. The room went absolutely still. The 2 security officers glanced at each other. Neither one moved. Nobody knew whose instructions to follow anymore. Christopher opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Bobby, we didn't. Robert held up one finger. Christopher stopped talking. Daniel found his voice. Tried to salvage something. These credentials are 17 years old. We need to verify. Robert withdrew a second document from the folder. Single page. Corporate letterhead. Bold text. He set it beside the founder ID card. Christopher read the header. Founder Rees Clee Section 17. The words seemed to hit him physically. He flinched. Robert's voice stayed calm, almost gentle. This clause was written into the corporate charter by Michael Johnson and myself before Williams Energy went public. It grants the founder, at his sole discretion, the right to reassert direct executive authority over the company. No board approval required. No advance notice required. It has never been invoked. Robert paused. Let the silence build. I am invoking it now. Time elapsed since Robert entered the conference room. 6 minutes. In those 6 minutes, Robert laid out 22 documents across the walnut table in careful, deliberate order. First, the Continental Fossil Holdings term sheet. $38 billion acquisition. $27 billion under actual value. Second, Christopher Hernandez personal compensation agreement. $85 million exit package. Third, Daniel Lopez board appointment letter. Continental Fossil Holdings. Guaranteed seat, 4th through 11th. Shell company formations. Financial transfers. 18 months of systematic R&D defunding. 12th through 22nd. Encrypted email transcripts. Meeting schedules. Timeline showing the full scope of negotiation extending back 11 months. Christopher stared at the documents. Didn't touch them. Couldn't touch them. Daniel's face went from pale to flushed to pale again, in the span of a single breath. The other 9 executives at the table sat frozen, rating upside down, calculating their own exposure, wondering if their names appeared anywhere in those 22 pages. Robert withdrew 2 more documents. Pre-drafted termination letters. Single page each. He picked up Michael Johnson's blue pen. The cheap plastic looked absurd in this room, full of $500 fountain pens and designer notebooks. Robert didn't care. He signed the first letter. The nib scratched twice across the paper. He slid it across the table to Christopher. Effective immediately. Your position as Chief Executive Officer of Williams Energy Systems is terminated. Your access credentials will be revoked before you reach the elevator. All company devices remain on this table. Your personal counsel will be contacted by end of business today. Christopher's mouth moved. No sound came out. Robert signed the second letter with the same blue pen, slid it to Daniel. Your position as Chief Operating Officer is terminated under the same authority. Same conditions apply. Daniel found his voice came out too loud. Too desperate. You can't do this. Not without cause stated in writing. Not without board approval. Not without 60 days notice under my contract. Robert cut him off. The cause is attached as Exhibits 1 through 22. Notice is hand-delivered. The board will receive their copies within the hour. He paused. Looked Daniel dead in the eye. You're welcome to sue. I encourage it. Discovery is going to be very educational. Daniel's hand trembled against the back of a chair. Christopher tried one more time, smoother than Daniel. More controlled, Bobby. I understand how this looks. I understand why someone would want you to see it this way. But you've been gone for 5 years. The regulatory landscape has changed. There are financial pressures you don't have the full context on. Let the three of us sit down privately before you make a decision you'll regret. Robert looked at him for a long moment. I already made the decision. Daniel's voice cracked. Louder now. Desperate. This is a hostile takeover attempt. You've been out of operations for 5 years. You're emotionally compromised. You have no current knowledge of our partnerships, our regulatory environment. He turned to the other executives. Any action he takes without board consultation will be legally challenged within the hour. One of the junior executives shifted uncomfortably. Daniel caught the movement. Turned on him. I'm telling all of you. This man cannot do what he's claiming to do. There are procedures, protocols, contracts. Robert's voice came quiet. Final, read the clause. Christopher tried again. Gentler this time. Almost pleading, Bobby. We were Michael's friends too. You know that. Whatever you've been shown, let us explain. Robert's expression didn't change. Michael is the reason I came back. Don't use his name against me in this room. The two security officers stepped forward. Not toward Robert. Toward Christopher, and Daniel. Christopher stood slowly. Like the act of standing required effort he was no longer capable of producing. Daniel stayed frozen for 3 seconds. Then walked toward the door. Stiff, mechanical. He paused at the threshold. Looked back, started to say something. Changed his mind. Left. Christopher followed. Slower. At the door he turned. Met Robert's eyes one last time. You're going to destroy this company. Robert answered without heat. Michael and I built it. You kept the lights on. Don't confuse the two. Christopher's face hardened, then he was gone. The door closed with a soft mechanical click. 9 executives remained at the table. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stared at the documents spread across the walnut surface, like evidence at a crime scene. Robert picked up his leather folder, tucked Michael's blue pen back inside, looked at the 9 remaining executives. This meeting is over. Return to your departments. Await further instruction. They filed out silent, shaken. The last one, a woman in her late 30s, VP of something Robert couldn't remember. Paused at the door. Mr. Williams. For what it's worth, some of us knew something was wrong. We just didn't know who to tell. Robert nodded once. She left. The conference room was empty. Robert stood alone at the head of the table. In the building he'd designed, at the company he'd founded, holding the pen his dead best friend had left behind. He walked to the window, looked out over San Francisco. Somewhere in this city, Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez were probably calling their lawyers, probably drafting statements, probably planning their counterattack. Robert didn't care. He pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls, 43 text messages, all from numbers he didn't recognize. News traveled fast in the financial district. One message stood out. From Emily Dad. It's all over Twitter. Rogue founder seizes control of Williams Energy. Are you okay? Robert typed back. I'm okay. Did what I came to do. Call you tonight. Love you. Emily's response came in 5 seconds. I'm proud of you. Robert stared at the message. Write it 3 times. Put the phone away. Walked to the elevator. The lobby was chaos. Employees clustered in groups. Phones out. Voices urgent. Robert walked through them like a ghost. Patricia Thompson watched from the reception desk. Their eyes met. She nodded. Just once, small, respectful. Robert nodded back. Took the elevator to the 58th floor, the executive suite. The door to the CEO's office stood open. Robert walked in. Christopher's office. Except it had been Robert's office first. Back when the building was new. Back when the building was new and Michael's office had been right next door and they'd spent late nights arguing over battery chemistry and laughing about the absurdity of trying to save the world with lithium and wire. The view hadn't changed. Bay Bridge to the east. Oakland Hills beyond. The furniture was different. Expensive now. Designer. The walls bore photographs of Christopher shaking hands with senators and industry leaders. Robert took them down one at a time, leaned them face inward against the baseboard, sat in the chair behind the desk, placed Michael Johnson's blue pen on the blotter. Didn't feel victorious. Felt the weight of something much heavier than victory. Felt like a man who'd just started a war he wasn't sure he could win. His phone buzzed. News alert: Williams Energy stock drops 9% following founder's surprise return. Robert read the headline, closed the browser, pulled up his email. 340 new messages since this morning. He ignored all of them except one. From jonas@jonassolar.com. Subject: I heard what you did today. We should talk. Elizabeth Jones, CEO of Jones Solar Technologies, self-made billionaire. Robert's biggest competitor. The woman who'd spent the last decade trying to out-innovate Williams Energy in the renewable space. Robert opened the message. Robert, word travels fast. Christopher approached me last year, trying to sell me your battery patents at a discount. Said you'd checked out and wouldn't notice. I told him to go to hell and documented everything. I've been waiting for you to come back so I could give you the evidence. Coffee tomorrow? Elizabeth. Robert stared at the message, closed his laptop, looked out at the bay. The sun was setting, turning the water gold. Robert thought about Emily, about Michael, about the blue pen on the desk and the promise he'd made 7 years ago. If the company starts drifting, pull the fire alarm. He'd pulled it. Now came the hard part, rebuilding everything the fire had destroyed. The sunrise over San Francisco felt accusatory. Robert stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the 58th floor watching the city wake up, and pretending the knot in his stomach was hunger instead of dread. 6:15 a.m., Thursday. 36 hours since he'd fired Christopher and Daniel. The company hadn't exploded yet, but it was close. His phone sat on the desk behind him, silent for exactly 4 minutes. A new record. The previous record had been 3 minutes. Yesterday, around noon. Right before the Wall Street Journal called asking if Robert Williams had suffered a mental breakdown. He'd declined to comment, which the Journal interpreted as confirmation. The headline went live at 2:47 p.m. Reclusive founder returns after 5 years. Fires entire executive team. In unannounced coup. Not accurate. Robert had only fired 2 executives. But accuracy and journalism had stopped being friends sometime around 2016. The phone buzzed. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. New record shattered. Robert didn't look, just watched the Bay Bridge traffic and tried to remember what breathing normally felt like. Behind him the office door opened. No knock, just the sound of expensive heels on hardwood. Robert turned. Patricia Thompson stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee, and an expression that suggested she'd seen this exact scenario play out before, and knew exactly how it ended. She crossed to the desk, set down both cups. You haven't slept, not a question. Robert picked up the nearest coffee. Black, no sugar. The way he'd taken it for 17 years, Patricia remembered. Of course she did. Sleep feels optional right now. Patricia raised an eyebrow. 61 years of calling bullshit concentrated into a single facial expression. Mr. Williams, I've worked at this desk for 17 years. I've watched 3 CEOs come and go. I've seen hostile takeovers and friendly mergers and everything in between. She gestured at the phone still buzzing on the desk. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that what you're doing right now, standing at that window pretending the company isn't hemorrhaging, is not sustainable. Robert took a long drink of coffee, bought himself 3 seconds to formulate a response that wasn't "I know and I'm terrified." What would you suggest? Patricia pulled a tablet from under her arm, tapped the screen twice, handed it to Robert. Read. The screen showed an internal company dashboard. Real-time metrics, employee communications, departmental status updates. All read, every single one. Engineering. 5 senior researchers submitted resignations overnight. Dallas Regional Office. Director told team not to report until leadership stabilization. Manufacturing floor 27. Production schedule halted. Nobody authorized to approve today's run. Finance. Stock down 11% in pre-market trading. Customer service. 43 client accounts requesting immediate meetings to discuss continuity concerns. Robert scrolled. The list went on. And on and on. He handed the tablet back. How bad? Patricia's expression didn't change. Worse than you think. Better than it could be. That's not helpful. Neither is standing at windows pretending you're fine. Robert almost smiled. Almost. You always this direct. Only with people who can handle it. She turned toward the door. Paused. The board called an emergency session. 9 a.m. Conference room B. All members attending except the 2 you removed yesterday. How many want me gone? Patricia glanced back. 4 out of 7 are undecided. 2 want you canonized. 1 wants you committed. Which one wants me committed? Does it matter? Fair point. Patricia left. Robert drained the coffee, chucked his phone. 87 new messages. He opened the one from Emily first. Dad. Are you okay? The news says you fired everyone and the stock crashed and investors are panicking. Call me. Robert typed back. I'm okay. Didn't fire everyone. Just the 2 who needed firing. Stock will recover. Don't believe everything you read. Love you. Emily's response came in 10 seconds. Kimberly's dad texted me again. Says he wants to discuss the situation. I told him to discuss it with his lawyer. I'm skipping school today. Taking the bus to SF. I want to see where you work. Robert's breath caught him. That's not necessary. I'm fine. Go to school. Too late. Already on the bus. See you at lunch. Of course she was. Because Emily had inherited Sarah's stubbornness and Robert's inability to leave things alone. And the combination made her functionally unstoppable. Robert put the phone down, walked back to the window, tried to figure out how to explain to his 16-year-old daughter that her father had just started a corporate war with no clear endgame and only a vague sense that doing nothing would have been worse. The phone rang, unknown number. Robert answered anyway. Williams, a woman's voice. Smooth, confident. Familiar from exactly one industry conference 3 years ago. Robert Williams. Elizabeth Jones. We've never actually spoken, but I feel like I know you through competitive anxiety and patent disputes. Robert's brain caught up. Elizabeth Jones, CEO of Jones Solar Technologies, 47. Self-made billionaire, built her company from a garage in Palo Alto when everyone told her solar was a dead end. Spent the last decade trying to out-innovate Williams Energy. Conceded more often than Robert wanted to admit. Ms. Jones, I got your email. Call me Elizabeth. And I'm guessing you're drowning in emails right now, so I'm calling instead. Appreciated. Coffee. Today, blue bottle on Montgomery. 10 a.m., not a question. A directive. Robert checked his watch. 8:43. Boyd meeting at 9. Coffee at 10 would require him to walk out of the board meeting early or skip it entirely. Both options sounded appealing. I'll be there. Good. And Robert? Yes? What you did yesterday took guts. Most founders don't have that anymore. Don't let the board talk you into apologizing for it. She hung up. Robert stared at the phone. Then pulled up Elizabeth's email from yesterday. Christopher approached me last year trying to sell me your battery patents at a discount. Said you'd checked out and wouldn't notice. I told him to go to hell and documented everything. I've been waiting for you to come back so I could give you the evidence. Robert's pulse kicked up half a notch. Christopher had tried to sell proprietary technology to Robert's biggest competitor without authorization, without disclosure, probably without shame. The phone buzzed again, text from a number Robert didn't recognize. Mr. Williams. This is Brandon Flores, corporate finance analyst, Williams Energy. I need to speak with you immediately. It's about the Continental deal. Please don't ignore this. Robert frowned, pulled up the company directory on his laptop. Brandon Flores, 29, 4 years with the company, junior analyst, no disciplinary record, no red flags. Robert hit reply. My office, 30 minutes. The response came in 5 seconds. Thank you, I'll be there. The board meeting started at exactly 9 a.m. Robert walked into conference room B 3 minutes late, intentionally, because walking in late established that he wasn't asking permission anymore. 7 people sat around the table. Robert knew all of them. Liked 3, trusted 1. Barbara Miller occupied the chair at the far end, 70 years old. Silver hair pulled into a neat bun, first investor. $2 million in 2009 when everyone else said grid-scale batteries were science fiction. She'd made 40 times her investment. Could have cashed out a dozen times. Stayed because she believed. Next to Barbara, Stephen Taylor, Tech VC, 49. Neutral in most fights. Voted with whoever had the better spreadsheet. Across from Stephen, Michelle Anderson. Renewable energy advocate. 46. Brilliant. Idealistic. Probably the only person in the room who cared more about mission than money. Then the problem children, Donald Thomas. 55. Hedge fund manager. Cold eyes. Colder handshake. Had joined the board in 2019 on Christopher's recommendation, which meant Christopher owned his vote. Or used to. Deborah White. 52. Former oil exec. Had transitioned to renewables. Around the same time, renewables became profitable. Robert trusted her about as far as he could throw the building. Kenneth Lee, 58, general counsel, sharp mind, sharper suits, would defend whichever side paid his retainer. Currently, that was Robert, for now. Robert took the empty chair across from Barbara, didn't apologize for being late, didn't explain, just sat. Donald spoke first. Robert, this board was not consulted before you terminated 2 senior executives. We understand you invoked Section 17. That doesn't exempt you from fiduciary duty. His voice carried the particular smugness of a man who thought he'd found a loophole. Robert met his eyes, said nothing, let the silence stretch. Donald shifted in his chair. Continued, the stock is down 19%. We've lost $11 billion in market cap in 36 hours. 3 law firms are preparing wrongful termination suits. You need to explain yourself. Robert leaned back, steepled his fingers. Explain what, exactly? Your decision-making process, your mental state. Your plan for stabilizing the company you just destabilized. Deborah jumped in tag team offense. Rehearsed. We also need to discuss your fitness to resume operational control. You've been absent for 5 years. You walked away after Michael Johnson's death. How do we know you're making rational decisions instead of emotional ones? Robert let them finish, counted to 3, then spoke. Let's discuss mental fitness. He opened the leather folder in front of him, withdrew a single sheet of paper, slid it across the table to Donald. You joined this board in 2019. Who recommended you? Donald glanced at the paper. Prox agreement, dated 2019. His signature at the bottom. Christopher Hernandez recommended me. So what? And you have a voting proxy. Correct? Allowing Christopher to vote your shares when you're unavailable? That's standard procedure. It's how Christopher negotiated a sale to Continental Fossil without needing my approval. Robert slid a second document to Deborah. Identical proxy agreement. Her signature. He had 51% effective control through your proxies, plus 3 other board members. Enough to sell the company I built without consulting the man who actually owns it. The room went quiet. Stephen Taylor leaned forward. Are you saying Christopher was using our proxy votes to sell Williams Energy to a fossil fuel conglomerate for $38 billion? Actual valuation, $65 billion. A $27 billion discount. Robert spread the next 10 documents across the table. Continental term sheet, Christopher's personal compensation package, Daniel's board seat agreement, shell company formations, 18 months of R&D sabotage, encrypted email transcripts, timeline evidence. All of it. Barbara picked up the term sheet. Read it, set it down carefully. Her voice came out steel wrapped in silk. How long have you known about this? 38 hours. And you didn't call the board first because half the board was helping him. Robert gestured at Donald and Deborah. Not intentionally. Maybe, but your proxy votes gave Christopher the authority to negotiate this deal. Your oversight failures gave him the confidence to steal $47 million through shell companies. Your rubber stamping of every budget cut for 18 months gave him the cover to gut our research division. Deborah's face flushed. We were assured those budget adjustments were legitimate, strategic repositioning. Barbara cut her off. You were assured by the same man trying to sell the company for 40% under value. Her could have etched glass. You didn't ask questions because asking questions is hard. Rubber stamping is easy. She turned to Robert. I'm voting to ratify every action you took under Section 17. I'm also moving to remove Donald Thomas and Deborah White from this board for failure of fiduciary duty. Donald stood. You can't. Robert spoke over him. She can. I second the motion. As controlling shareholder, I'm calling an immediate vote. Kenneth Lee cleared his throat. Procedurally valid. All in favor, Barbara. Aye. Robert. Aye. Stephen Taylor hesitated. Looked at the documents spread across the table. Looked at Donald's face going purple. Aye. Michelle Anderson didn't hesitate. Aye. Kenneth Lee. Motion carries. 4 votes for removal. 66%. Donald Thomas and Deborah White are removed from the board effective immediately. Deborah stood, trembling. This is a witch hunt. You'll regret this, Robert. Robert met her eyes. I already regret trusting Christopher Hernandez for 5 years. This doesn't even register. She grabbed her bag, stormed toward the door. Donald followed, paused at the threshold. You're destroying this company. Robert didn't blink. I'm saving it. There's a difference. They left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. 4 board members remained. Robert, Barbara, Stephen, Michelle, Kenneth as counsel. The room felt lighter. Barbara spoke first. "Welcome back, Robert. Don't disappear again." Robert checked his watch, 9:47 a.m. 13 minutes to get to Blue Bottle. He stood. "I have a meeting." Barbara raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Robert left the board members sitting in silence. Blue Bottle Coffee on Montgomery was exactly the kind of place where billion-dollar deals got made over $5 lattes. Exposed brick, reclaimed wood, baristas who looked like they moonlighted in indie bands. Robert arrived at 10:03 a.m. Elizabeth Jones sat at a corner table, blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Dark hair pulled back, laptop open. Working while waiting, she looked up when Robert approached, closed the laptop, smiled, not corporate polite, actually warm. Robert Williams, the man who walked into his own building, and nobody knew his face. Robert sat. "You read the reports. I lived them. 3 years ago, my board tried to oust me. Difference is I saw it coming. You didn't." Her directness was refreshing. Most CEOs wrapped everything in 7 layers of diplomatic nonsense. Elizabeth just said things. I was distracted. Grief isn't distraction. It's survival mode. She pushed a coffee across the table. Black. No sugar. Robert raised an eyebrow. "How did you?" "I've been competing with you for 10 years. I know how you take your coffee. I know you rebuild old trucks in your garage. You have a 16-year-old daughter named Emily who's smarter than both of us." Robert's guard went up. Elizabeth caught it. "Relax. I'm not stalking you. I'm just good at research. It's why my company's still standing. Fair." Robert took a drink. "Perfect temperature. Your email said Christopher approached you." Elizabeth pulled a USB drive from her bag, slid it across the table. "Last year. October. Christopher called asking if I wanted to explore strategic collaboration opportunities, which in CEO speak means I want to sell you something you shouldn't be able to buy. Des battery patents. Your 4th-generation storage tech. The stuff that made Williams Energy worth $65 billion instead of 30. He offered it at a 40% discount. Said you'd checked out mentally after Michael died and wouldn't notice the patents moving." Robert's jaw set. "What did you do?" "Told him to go to hell. Then documented everything. Recorded the calls, saved the emails. Had my general counsel draft a memo outlining the offer in case it ever became relevant." She tapped the USB drive. "It's all here. Encrypted conversations, price negotiations, timeline. Enough to bury him in federal court if you want." Robert stared at the drive. "Why help me? We're competitors." Elizabeth leaned back, studied him for a long moment. "Because renewable energy doesn't need more competition between good actors. It needs collaboration against bad actors." She paused. "And because Christopher Hernandez called me 6 months after that first conversation. Different pitch, same goal. He wanted me to acquire Williams Energy. Said the board was ready for new leadership, and you were too emotionally compromised to return." Robert's pulse spiked. He was shopping the company around. To anyone who'd listen, I wasn't the only one he approached. Just the only one who told him no and kept receipts. Robert picked up the USB drive, turned it over in his hand. "Why wait until now to give me this?" Elizabeth's expression softened. "Because you weren't ready. You spent 5 years hiding in Boulder. I didn't blame you. Grief is brutal. But you couldn't fight Christopher until you were ready to fight. And yesterday I proved I was ready. Yesterday you walked into your own building in an old suit and let them mock you for an hour before pulling a founder override clause nobody knew existed. That's not ready. That's Shakespearean." She smiled. Actually smiled. Robert found himself smiling back. "I also have a business proposition." Robert set down his coffee. "I'm listening. Jones Solar makes panels. Williams Energy makes batteries. Separately, we're good. Together we could build integrated grid storage that actually works at scale. 50-50 partnership, shared R&D, shared risk, shared profit." Robert's brain shifted into analysis mode. Joint venture with his biggest competitor, pros. Accelerate development, pool resources, dominate market, trust issues, integration nightmares. Potential disaster if it fails. Why now? Elizabeth leaned forward. "Because Continental Fossil tried to kill Williams Energy. Let's bury Continental instead." The simplicity was beautiful. The audacity was terrifying. Robert thought about Michael. About what Michael would say if he were here. Probably something like, "Stop overthinking and build the thing. When can your team meet with mine?" Elizabeth pulled out her phone. "Tomorrow. Your offices, 10 a.m. I'll bring my VP of Engineering and my CFO. I'll have my people ready." Elizabeth stood, extended her hand. Robert shook it. Her grip was firm, confident. "One more thing, Robert, yes? What you did yesterday took guts. Most founders don't have that anymore. Don't let anyone make you apologize for it." She left. Robert sat alone at the corner table, holding a USB drive full of evidence and a coffee that was still somehow the perfect temperature. His phone buzzed. "Emily, I'm in your lobby. Patricia says you're at coffee. I'm waiting. Don't take too long. I'm hungry." Robert smiled, paid for the coffee, headed back to the office. Emily sat in the 58th floor reception area looking exactly like what she was. 16, jeans, backpack. Too smart for high school and too young for corporate warfare. Patricia stood nearby, clearly appointed as unofficial guardian until Robert returned. Emily saw him first, stood crossed the space in 4 strides, hugged him without warning. Robert froze for half a second, then hugged back. "Hey, Em?" Emily pulled away, studied his face. "You look terrible." "Thanks, I mean it." "When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep's overrated." Emily's expression said she wasn't buying it. Patricia cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two alone." "Mr. Williams, Brandon Flores is waiting in your office." Robert nodded. Patricia left. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Who's Brandon Flores?" "Junior analyst. Wants to talk about something urgent. More urgent than your daughter skipping school to make sure you haven't had a breakdown." "Fair point." Robert guided Emily toward his office. "Come on. You can sit in. Consider it educational. I'm 16. "Everything's educational." They walked into the CEO's office. Brandon Flores stood by the window. 29. Thin. Glasses. Nervous energy vibrating off him like a tuning fork. He turned when they entered, saw Emily, hesitated. Robert made the introduction. "Brandon Flores. This is my daughter Emily. She's sitting in. Whatever you need to say, you can say in front of her." Brandon's Adam's apple bobbed. "Mr. Williams, I'm the one who sent you the email." Robert went very still. "The anonymous email." "Yes." Emily looked between them. "What email?" Robert kept his eyes on Brandon, the one that contained 22 attachments, documenting Christopher and Daniel's plan to sell the company. Emily's eyebrows shot up. "You're the whistleblower?" Brandon nodded. Looked like he might throw up. Robert crossed to the desk, sat, gestured for Brandon to sit. Brandon stayed standing. "I need you to know I didn't hack anything. CFO Munson had a stroke 3 weeks ago. Collapsed at his desk. Paramedics rushed him out. He left his laptop open. I was assigned to close his files. I found an encrypted folder labeled Continental Acquisition, Confidential. I opened it. His voice shook. I spent 3 weeks documenting everything, cross-referencing, building the timeline. I knew if I went to anyone internal, they'd bury it. Christopher controlled too much. So I found your address. It took 4 days, sent the email. Waited." Robert leaned back. "You risked your career. I risked getting sued. Blacklisted. Maybe prosecuted for accessing files above my clearance level. Why?" Brandon met his eyes. "Because I took this job, because I believed what the company said it was building. When I found the term sheet, I thought I was wrong. Maybe Christopher had a good reason. Maybe I misunderstood." He pulled off his glasses, wiped them, put them back on. "But then I found the R&D budget memos, the shell companies, the timeline. And I kept thinking about the interview you gave in 2013. The one where you said a company forgets its purpose, the moment its leaders forget who they work for." Robert remembered that interview. TechCrunch. Michael had been sitting off-camera making faces to try to make Robert laugh. "You remember one line from an interview 8 years ago?" "I remember the whole interview. It's why I applied here instead of Tesla or Google." Emily spoke up. "You're either very brave or very stupid." Brandon looked at her. "Probably both." Robert stood, walked around the desk, extended his hand. Brandon stared at it like it might explode. "You're not firing me? I'm promoting you." Brandon's mouth fell open. "To what? Assistant CFO. You'll work directly under whoever I hire to replace Munson. Learn everything. Fast track to CFO in 5 years if you don't screw up." Brandon just stared. Emily grinned. "See? Brave and stupid pays off." Robert's expression stayed serious. "You did what I should have done 3 years ago. You paid attention. You acted. You risked everything to do the right thing." He paused. "Michael Johnson used to say, 'Do the right thing, especially when it's terrifying.' You lived that. Thank you." Brandon's eyes went glassy. He shook Robert's hand, gripped it like a lifeline. "I won't let you down, I know." Brandon left, moving like a man who'd just won the lottery and wasn't sure it was real. Emily watched him go, then turned to Robert. "Dad, that was really cool. Promoting someone for doing their job? Promoting someone for having a spine. Most bosses would have buried him for snooping. Robert walked back to the window, looked out over the city. Most bosses care more about control than truth. Emily joined him, stood shoulder to shoulder looking at San Francisco. Is that why you came back? For truth? Robert thought about it. I came back because staying away was cowardice disguised as healing. Emily's voice went quiet. You weren't a coward, Dad. You were drowning. Same result? No, it's not. She turned to face him. Drowning people don't choose to drown. They're just trying to survive. You survived. Now you're swimming again. That's not cowardice. That's recovery. Robert looked at his daughter. Saw Sarah staring back, same fire, same refusal to accept bullshit, same ability to cut through his self-loathing with surgical precision. When did you get so wise? Emily shrugged. Had a good teacher, your mom, both of you. Robert's voice caught. Emily saved him from having to respond. So, lunch. I'm starving. And you're taking me somewhere nice, because I just skipped school to make sure you're okay. Robert almost argued, then didn't. Because his daughter had taken a bus from Boulder to San Francisco to check on him, and that deserved more than cafeteria food. Italian, okay? Italian's perfect. They ate at a small place 3 blocks from the office. Quiet, understated. The kind of restaurant where the pasta was handmade and the owner remembered your name. Robert had brought Cersei here on their first date. 23 years ago, before Williams' energy, before Emily, before everything got complicated. Now he sat across from his daughter eating carbonara and trying not to think about how fast 16 years had disappeared. Emily twirled pasta around her fork. Can I ask you something? Always. Are you going to be okay? Like actually okay. Not Dad pretending everything's fine okay. Robert set down his fork, met her eyes, honestly? I don't know. Emily nodded. Appreciated the honesty. The news says you're having a breakdown. That you fired everyone in a rage and the company's collapsing. I fired 2 people. With evidence. The company's not collapsing. It's adjusting. Kimberly's dad sent me an article this morning. She pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. Forbes, rogue founder or savior. Robert Williams returns after 5 years to dismantle his own company. The subheading was worse. Insiders question Williams' mental stability as stock plummets and executives flee. Robert handed the phone back. You can't believe everything you read, I know. But everyone at school does. Kimberly posted it with the caption, Emily's dad finally proves he's as much of a failure as we thought. Robert's hands curled into fists under the table. What did you do? Emily's smile was pure mischief, I commented. My dad fired 2 executives for trying to sell his company to fossil fuel interests. What did your dad do today? Post golf scores on LinkedIn? Robert laughed, actually laughed. First real laugh in 36 hours. How'd that go over? Kimberly blocked me. Her dad texted me saying I was spreading defamatory lies and he wants to discuss my aggressive behavior. The laughter died. He used the word aggressive? Twice. Robert pulled out his phone. What's his number, Dad? No. Emily. No. I can handle Kimberly and her hedge fund dad. You handle your corporate coup. Deal? Robert wanted to argue, wanted to call Kimberly's father and explain exactly how aggressive Robert could get when someone threatened his daughter. But Emily's expression said she meant it. She wanted to fight her own battles, just like Sarah had, just like Robert had taught her. Deal. But if he escalates, I'll tell you immediately. Promise? Promise. They finished lunch, walked back to the office. Emily stopped at the entrance. I should get back to Boulder. Bus leaves in 40 minutes. Robert frowned. I'll drive you. You have a company to save. I'll take the bus, Em. She hugged him. Hard. I'm proud of you, Dad. Whatever happens next. I'm proud you came back and fought. She pulled away before Robert could respond. Disappeared into the crowd. Robert stood on the sidewalk watching her go, 16 years old. Smarter than he'd been at 30. Braver than he was now. He walked back into the building. The rest of Thursday disappeared into damage control. Robert held an emergency all-hands meeting at 3 p.m. Broadcast to every office on every continent. 4,000 employees watching. Robert spoke for 11 minutes. No notes, no script, just truth. My name is Robert Williams. Most of you have never met me. I walked away from this company 5 years ago because my best friend died, and I didn't know how to keep building without him. His voice echoed through the auditorium. Through screens in Dallas and Berlin and Tokyo, that was selfish. I trusted the wrong people to protect what Michael and I started. They didn't. They tried to sell it to interests that wanted to destroy it. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I'm not promising this gets easier. We're in crisis. Stock's down. Clients are nervous. Competitors are circling. Robert paused. Let that sink in, but I'm promising you this. If you stay, your work matters. We're going back to what this company was built for. Grid-scale renewable storage that actually works. Not quarterly earnings targets. Not stock price manipulation. Real work. The kind Michael believed in. He held up Michael's blue pen. This pen belonged to my co-founder. He used it to sketch our first battery prototype. He kept it in his pocket during every investor meeting. He left it behind when he died. Robert's voice roughened. I keep it now. To remember what we started and why. He set the pen on the podium. If you're still here Monday, I'll assume you're in. If you're not, I understand. No hard feelings. Thank you for what you've already given. The feed cut silence. Then, from somewhere in the back of the auditorium, one person started clapping, then another, then 20. Then the entire room. Standing ovation. Robert didn't smile, just nodded once, left the stage. Friday morning brought 3 developments. First, stock recovered 6% overnight, down 13% total instead of 19% progress. Second, 2 of the 5 engineers who'd resigned on Wednesday rescinded their resignations. More progress. Third, Christopher Hernandez's attorneys filed a wrongful termination lawsuit seeking $200 million in damages. Expected annoying, but expected. Robert sat in his office reading the complaint when Patricia buzzed through. Mr. Williams. Elizabeth Jones on line 2. Robert picked up. Elizabeth. Her voice came through warm. I heard your all-hands speech. Michael's pen, that was perfect. It was honest. Same thing. Robert could hear her smile through the phone. My team's ready for Monday. 10 a.m. Your conference room. We'll be ready. Pause. Then Elizabeth's voice shifted it. Less CEO, more personal. Robert, can I ask you something? Always. Dinner tonight? Not business. Just dinner. Robert's brain stuttered, because that sounded less like networking and more like, are you asking me on a date? Elizabeth's laugh was genuine. I'm asking you to dinner. You can interpret it however you want. I haven't dated since my wife died. I haven't dated since my husband died. So we're both terrified. Want to be terrified together? Robert's first instinct was to say no. Too complicated too soon, too everything. But standing there in his office, holding the phone and listening to Elizabeth's voice, confident, direct, unafraid, Robert heard Sarah's voice in his head. You're allowed to be happy again, Bobby. Don't stay sad forever. Friday. 7 p.m. Where? Quince, North Beach. I'll make the reservation. It's a date. Elizabeth's voice went soft. Yes, it is. She hung up. Robert stood alone in his office processing. Elizabeth Jones had just asked him to dinner. Elizabeth Jones, his biggest competitor. A woman he'd spent 10 years trying to out-innovate. A woman who was brilliant and terrifying, and apparently interested in more than just batteries. Robert's phone buzzed text from Emily. How's the corporate coup going? Robert smiled, typed back, complicated. Also, I think I have a date tonight. Emily's response came in 3 seconds. What? With W.O. Elizabeth Jones. CEO of Jones Solar Dad. That's amazing, don't screw it up. Helpful advice. I'm 16. All my advice is helpful. Wear the blue shirt. Not the navy one. The lighter blue. Robert laughed, noted. He pocketed his phone, walked back to his desk, tried not to think about the fact that in less than 48 hours, he'd gone from hiding in Boulder to firing his entire executive team to potentially dating his biggest competitor. Life came at you fast. Friday morning started with a phone call Robert didn't want. 7:47 a.m. Dunal number. He's answered anyway. Williams. Male voice. Smooth. Expensive. The kind of voice that belonged to a man who wore suits that cost more than most people's cars. Mr. Williams. Richard Miller. I'm Kimberly Clark's father. I believe you know my daughter from Emily's school. Robert's pulse spiked. Mr. Miller. What can I do for you? I'd like to discuss a situation involving our daughters. Kimberly has been traumatized by Emily's aggressive behavior and defamatory online comments. Robert's grip tightened on the phone. Traumatized, yes. Emily's recent comments on social media have caused Kimberly significant emotional distress. I'm considering legal action unless we can resolve this amicably. Robert counted to 3. Reminded himself that threatening a hedge fund manager over his daughter's hurt feelings was probably not productive, Mr. Miller. Let me make sure I understand. Your daughter has spent 3 weeks calling my daughter failure daughter at school. Posted articles about me with captions designed to humiliate Emily. And when Emily defended herself online, your daughter was traumatized. That's a mischaracterization, is it? Because I have screenshots of every post Kimberly made. Timestamps, context, the whole thing, silence on the other end. Robert continued. Here's what's going to happen. Your daughter is going to leave my daughter alone. Completely. No more posts, no more comments, no more cafeteria harassment. And in return, I won't file a formal complaint with the school about 3 weeks of documented bullying. You can't. I can. And I will. Because unlike you, Mr. Miller, I don't threaten legal action when teenagers hurt each other's feelings. But I do protect my daughter. Are we clear? Long pause. Crystal? Click. Richard Miller hung up. Robert set down the phone, hands shaking slightly, not from fear. From the satisfaction of finally doing something instead of just absorbing damage. His phone buzzed. Emily, Kimberly's dad just texted me saying to forget our previous conversation and that Kimberly won't be bothering me anymore. What did you do? Robert typed back, had a conversation. Father to father, you're the best, I know. The day disappeared into meetings, engineering review, financial projections, killing calls. By 6:30 p.m., Robert's brain felt like static. He went home, changed into the light blue shirt Emily had specified, dark jeans, leather jacket, looked at himself in the mirror. 52 years old, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. He looked tired. He looked older. He looked like a man who'd spent 5 years hiding and 2 days fighting, and wasn't sure which version of himself was supposed to show up to dinner. Robert grabbed his keys, drove to San Francisco, arrived at Quince at 7:03. Elizabeth was already there, seated at a corner table, wine in hand. She looked up when he approached, smiled, not CEO smile, real smile. You're late, traffic, liar. You were stalling. Robert sat, maybe. Elizabeth poured him a glass of wine. Relax. This isn't a business meeting. You don't have to perform. Then what is it? Elizabeth's expression softened. Two people who've spent 10 years competing, having a conversation, where we're not allowed to talk about batteries or solar panels or quarterly earnings. What are we allowed to talk about? Anything else? Robert took a drink. You go first. Elizabeth leaned back. Okay, my husband died 6 years ago. Cancer pancreatic, diagnosed in March, gone by August. We'd been married 14 years, no kids. Just us and the company we built together. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes went distant. After he died, I threw myself into work. Became the CEO everyone's scared of. The Iron Lady of renewable energy. Built Jones Solar into an $8 billion company. Because building something felt better than feeling anything. She met Robert's eyes. Sound familiar? Robert's breath caught. Very. Your turn. Robert set down his wine. My wife Sarah died 8 years ago. Car accident. Black ice. Left behind a 9-year-old daughter and a husband who had no idea how to be a single parent. He paused. Michael died 18 months later. Heart attack. 45 years old. Happened at his desk. By the time I got there, he was already gone. Robert's voice roughened. I lasted another year. Then broke. Walked away. Spent 5 years rebuilding truck engines and pretending I was healing when really I was just hiding. Elizabeth reached across the table. Took his hand. Didn't say anything. Just held it. The gesture was simple. Devastating. Robert hadn't held hands with anyone since Sarah. Hadn't wanted to. But sitting there with Elizabeth Jones. Competitor. CEO. Woman who understood loss in a way most people never would. It felt right. They ate dinner. Talked about everything except work. Emily. Elizabeth's niece in Portland. Books they'd read. Places they wanted to travel but never had time for. The absurdity of being in their late 40s and still trying to figure out what happiness looked like. At 9:30, Elizabeth checked her watch. I should go. Early flight to Seattle tomorrow. Robert stood. I'll walk you to your car. They stepped outside. San Francisco night air. Cool. Clear. Elizabeth's car sat 3 spaces down. She unlocked it. Turned to face Robert. This was nice. It was. Want to do it again? Robert's brain screamed, too complicated, too soon, too everything. His heart said something different. Yes, Elizabeth smiled. Leaned in. Kissed him. Not tentative. Not asking permission. Just kissed him. Robert froze for half a second. Then kissed back. First kiss in 8 years. It felt like coming up for air after drowning. Elizabeth pulled away. Monday. Your office. 10 a.m. I want your answers on the partnership. Business and personal. You're efficient. I'm practical. Life's short. Why waste time? She got in her car. Drove away. Robert stood on the sidewalk processing. His phone buzzed. Emily, how was the date? Robert smiled. Good. Really good. Did you kiss her? How did you, Dad? I'm 16. I know things. Also, you're texting slower than usual, which means you're distracted, which means something happened. We kissed. I'm so happy for you. Robert laughed. Drove home. Slept better than he had in 5 years. Monday morning arrived with the weight of decisions Robert wasn't sure he was ready to make. He stood in the kitchen making coffee while Emily ate cereal and scrolled through her phone with the focused intensity of someone looking for bad news. Found it, Dad. Christopher's lawyers filed another motion. They're claiming you violated SEC disclosure rules by not announcing the terminations to shareholders within 24 hours. Robert poured coffee into 2 mugs, slid one across to Emily. They're grasping, they're annoying. Same thing. Emily set down her phone, studied his face. You look nervous. I'm not nervous. You're lying. You always make too much coffee when you're nervous. There's enough for 6 people. Robert glanced at the pot. She was right. Damon. Elizabeth's coming in at 10. Partnership decision. Emily's eyes lit up. The woman you kissed, we're discussing business. You kissed her on Friday. It's Monday. That's not just business anymore. 16 years old and already better at reading people than Robert had ever been. Sarah's genes. Definitely Sarah's genes. It's complicated. Emily stood. Grabbed a backpack. Dad, life's complicated. Doesn't mean you run from it. She kissed his cheek. Go sign the partnership. Kiss Elizabeth again. Build something cool. I'll be at school pretending to care about trigonometry. She left. Robert stood alone in a kitchen that felt too quiet. Drank coffee that was too strong. Tried to figure out when his daughter had become the wise one in the family. Williams Energy Systems headquarters buzzed with a different energy than it had 6 days ago. Not quite optimistic, but no longer dying. Robert walked through the lobby at 9:47 a.m. Patricia looked up from the reception desk. Morning, Mr. Williams. Ms. Jones arrived 15 minutes ago. Conference room B. She brought breakfast. Of course she did. Elizabeth didn't do anything halfway. Robert took the elevator to 58, walked down the corridor, plilved open the conference room door. Elizabeth stood at the windows, navy blazer, white shirt, jeans, the combination of corporate and casual that said she was comfortable enough to stop performing. Pastries covered the table, coffee, orange juice, fruit. She turned when he entered, smiled, not CEO smile, the other one. The one that made Robert's chest do something complicated. You're early. So are you, I'm always early. Occupational hazard. Robert crossed to the table. Grabbed a croissant he wasn't hungry for. Your team ready? My team's been ready since Thursday. Question is whether your team's ready. Fair. Robert had spent the weekend running numbers, revenue projections, risk analysis, integration timelines. Every model said the same thing. Partnership made sense. Financially, strategically, morally. But standing there looking at Elizabeth, competitor, CEO, woman he'd kissed 3 days ago. Robert knew the decision was about more than spreadsheets. I read your proposal 6 times. Elizabeth's eyebrow arched. 6? First time for the numbers. Second time for the risk assessment. Third through 6th trying to find the catch. And there's no catch. Which makes me nervous. Elizabeth set down her coffee, walked closer, stopped 3 feet away. Close enough that Robert could smell her perfume. Something subtle. Expensive, Robert. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm offering partnership because separately we're good, and together we could be unstoppable. That's it. No hidden agenda. No corporate games. She paused. Unless you count the part where I'm attracted to you, and hoping this partnership means I get to see you more often. But that's personal. Not corporate. Robert's brain short-circuited. Elizabeth just said she was attracted to him. Out loud in a conference room before a major business decision, the directness was terrifying. Also kind of amazing. You're very honest. I'm 47. I don't have time for subtlety. Robert's phone buzzed. Doc text from Emily. Stop overthinking and sign the deal. Also kiss her again. Life's short. Robert showed Elizabeth the message. She laughed, actually laughed. Your daughter's smart. Terrifyingly smart. So what's your answer? Robert looked at the partnership agreement sitting on the table. 50-page document. Joint venture, shared risk, shared reward. Everything Michael would have wanted. Everything Sarah would have told him to do. Robert picked up a pen. Michael's blue pen. The one that had signed every major deal since 2009. Signed the partnership agreement on page 47. Slid it across to Elizabeth. We're partners. Elizabeth signed without hesitation. We're partners. They shook hands. Professional. Appropriate. Then Elizabeth pulled him closer. Kissed him. Less appropriate. More honest. Robert kissed back. Didn't care that they were in a conference room. Didn't care that this was technically unprofessional. Just cared that Elizabeth tasted like coffee and confidence. and the future he'd stopped believing in 5 years ago. She pulled away. Now it's official. Pretty sure the signature made it official. That was business. This was personal. Both matter. Robert's phone rang. Brandon Flores. Robert answered Brandon. What's wrong? Brandon's voice came through tight, stressed. Mr. Williams. We have a problem. Christopher's legal team just filed for an emergency injunction. They're trying to freeze all major corporate decisions pending the wrongful termination trial. Robert's stomach dropped. Can they do that? They're trying. Hearing scheduled for Wednesday. Federal court. If the judge grants it, we can't execute the partnership agreement until the trial's resolved, which could take months. Elizabeth's expression hardened. Went from warm to glacial in half a second. They're trying to kill the deal before we execute. Robert's jaw set. How do we fight it? Brandon's voice crackled through the speaker. Kenneth Lee is drafting our response. But he says we need to show the court that Christopher and Daniel were acting against shareholder interests, that the terminations were justified, which means we need to present the evidence. Publicly, yes. Robert looked at Elizabeth. She mouthed 2 words. Do it, Brandon. Schedule a press conference. Tomorrow, noon. I'm releasing everything. Silence on the other end. Then, sir, if you release that evidence before trial, Christopher's attorneys will claim you're poisoning the jury pool. Could hurt our case. I don't care about the case. I care about the company. Schedule it. Yes, sir. Robert hung up. Elizabeth crossed her arms. You're going nuclear. They started it. Fair. But once you release those documents, you can't take them back. Christopher goes down. Hard. You ready for that? Robert thought about Michael. About the blue pen in his hand. About 5 years of hiding while 2 men destroyed everything Michael had died building. I'm ready. The press conference was scheduled for noon Tuesday, which gave Robert exactly 26 hours to prepare. He spent them working 1, called Kenneth Lee. Confirmed legal strategy. Got lectured about poisoning jury pools. 2, called Barbara Miller. Told her the plan. Got full support. 3, drafted talking points with Brandon. Mart. 4, practiced delivery. Failed miserably. Mart. 5, gave up on practicing. 6 through 12, worked on integration plans with Elizabeth's team. Young. 13, dinner with Elizabeth at a Thai place in Mission District. She ordered for both of them. Didn't ask permission, just did it. Robert found it weirdly attractive. You're nervous about tomorrow. Not a question. Elizabeth just knew. I'm about to destroy 2 men's careers on national television. You're about to tell the truth. They destroyed their own careers. Doesn't make it easier. Elizabeth set down her chopsticks, reached across the table, took his hand. Robert, you're not the villain here. You're the founder who came back and fought for what you built. Don't apologize for that. I'm not apologizing. Yes, you are. In your head. You're running through all the ways this could go wrong. All the ways you could be perceived as petty or vindictive or unstable. She squeezed his hand. Stop. You're none of those things. You're a man who trusted the wrong people and paid attention too late. But you're paying attention now. That's what matters. Robert's voice caught. How are you so good at this? At what? Seeing through my bullshit. Elizabeth smiled. Practice. My husband was terrible at admitting when he was scared. Took me 5 years to learn how to read him. Her expression softened. You and Tom would have liked each other. Both of you were brilliant and stubborn, and absolutely terrified of being vulnerable. Robert's chest ached. Sarah would have liked you too. She had 0 patience for corporate nonsense. Would have appreciated your directness. They sat in comfortable silence. Ate pad thai. Didn't talk about the press conference. Didn't talk about the partnership. Just existed together. 2 people who'd lost everything and were slowly learning how to build something new. Elizabeth drove Robert back to his car at 10:30, parked next to him. Engine running. You want company tonight? Not like that. Just company. So you don't spend all night overthinking tomorrow. Robert's first instinct was to say no. Old habit. Push people away. Process alone. But sitting in Elizabeth's car watching her wait for an answer, without pressure or expectation, Robert realized he didn't want to be alone. Yes, they drove to Robert's hotel in separate cars, sat on the balcony drinking wine until 1 a.m. Talking about everything except tomorrow. Elizabeth fell asleep on the couch around 2. Robert covered her with a blanket, went to his room, lay awake until 5 a.m. running through worst-case scenarios. Tuesday morning broke clear and cold. Robert woke to find Elizabeth already up. Dressed, coffee made. She handed him a mug. You look terrible. Slept great. Thanks for asking, liar. Robert drank the coffee. Bitter strong. Perfect. You didn't have to stay. Elizabeth's expression went soft, I know. Wanted to. They drove to Williams Energy in separate cars. Arrived at 10:09 a.m. The lobby was chaos. News crews setting up cameras. Reporters checking credentials. Patricia managing the madness with the calm efficiency of someone who'd seen worse. She caught Robert's eye, nodded once. You've got this. Robert took the elevator to 58. Brandon waited in his office, tablet in hand, looking like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days. Everything's ready. Podium set up. Documents distributed to press. Legal reviewed the statement. You're clear to proceed. Robert nodded. How bad's the blowback going to be? Brandon didn't sugarcoat it. Christopher's attorneys are going to scream. Probably file for contempt. Possibly sanctions. But Kenneth thinks we're protected under First Amendment and shareholder disclosure requirements. In English, you're legally allowed to tell shareholders about executive misconduct. Might piss off a judge. Won't land you in jail. Good enough. Robert walked to the window, looked down at the plaza. 200 people milling around. Cameras. Microphones. The machinery of public opinion waiting to devour whatever he said and spit it back out as headlines. His phone buzzed. Emily, Dad. I'm watching the live stream in study hall. You've got this. Tell the truth. That's all you need to do. Robert smiled. Texted back. Thanks, Em. Love you. Love you too. Don't cry on camera. It'll become a meme. Helpful as always. 11:58 a.m. Brandon appeared at the door. Time. Robert grabbed Michael's blue pen, slipped it into his jacket pocket, took the elevator down. The plaza was louder than Robert expected. Cameras clicking, reporters shouting questions. Robert walked to the podium. The noise stopped. Silence descended like fog. 200 people waiting. Millions watching online. Robert cleared his throat. My name is Robert Williams. I founded Williams Energy Systems in 2009 with my best friend Michael Johnson. He died in 2018. I walked away in 2019. Last Tuesday I came back. His voice echoed through speakers. Steady, controlled. I came back because I received evidence that 2 executives I trusted were negotiating to sell this company to Continental Fossil Holdings. Not for its value. For their profit. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Robert continued. Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez spent 11 months negotiating a sale that would have valued Williams Energy at $38 billion. Our actual valuation, $65 billion. A $27 billion discount. He paused. Let that number sink in. In exchange for that discount, Christopher secured an $85 million personal exit package. Daniel secured a board seat at Continental and a $12 million consulting contract. More murmurs, louder now. For 18 months prior to the sale negotiation, Christopher and Daniel systematically defunded our research division. They redirected $47 million to shell companies they controlled. They sabotaged the work Michael died building so they could sell it cheap to interests that wanted to destroy it. Robert pulled out a remote, clicked, the screen behind him lit up. Continental term sheet. This is the sale agreement, dated 6 weeks ago. Next slide, Christopher's compensation package. This is Christopher Hernandez's personal exit deal. Next, Daniel's board appointment. This is Daniel Lopez's reward for betrayal. Next, shell company formations, financial transfers, GIME transcripts, Tamalian evidence, all of it. 22 slides documenting systematic fraud. The plaza went silent. Robert turned back to the cameras. I'm releasing these documents to the Securities and Exchange Commission today. I'm providing them to federal prosecutors, and I'm making them available to every shareholder and employee who wants to see exactly what Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez did to the company we built. His voice hardened. They're suing me for wrongful termination, claiming I'm emotionally unstable, that I acted impulsively, that I'm destroying the company. Robert leaned into the microphone. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting what Michael and I started. And if telling the truth makes me unstable, then I'll own that label. He stepped back. Questions. The plaza erupted. 50 reporters shouting at once. Robert pointed to a woman in front. Wall Street Journal. Mr. Williams. Do you have evidence beyond these documents that Christopher and Daniel were acting fraudulently? Yes. Elizabeth Jones, CEO of Jones Solar Technologies, will testify that Christopher approached her last year, attempting to sell proprietary Williams Energy patents without authorization. Next question. Bloomberg. What about claims that you're acting out of revenge rather than business judgment? Robert's jaw set. Revenge would have been exposing this privately and watching them implode quietly. Justice is making sure every shareholder knows what they tried to do. TechCrunch. Are you concerned about legal repercussions from releasing this information before trial? I'm concerned about protecting 4,000 employees and millions of shareholders from executives who put personal profit over fiduciary duty. Legal repercussions are secondary. CNBC. What's your message to investors who've lost 19% in the last week? Robert looked directly at the camera. The stock dropped because I fired 2 criminals. It'll recover, because we're getting back to the work that made Williams Energy worth $65 billion in the first place. If you're investing for quarterly earnings, sell now. If you're investing in renewable energy that actually works, stay. We're just getting started. More questions. 20 minutes of questions. Robert answered everyone. No deflection, no corporate speak, just truth. At 12:34 p.m., he stepped away from the podium, walked back through the lobby, took the elevator to 58. Patricia was waiting. That was either brilliant or career suicide. Maybe both. Stock's up 4% since you started talking. Robert blinked. What? Patricia showed him her tablet. Williams Energy stock chart. Climbing in real time. Up 6% now. Investors were buying, not selling. Buying. Brandon appeared, pawning in hand. Crest, somewhere between shock and joy, sir. Kenneth just called. Christopher's attorneys withdrew the emergency injunction request. Robert's brain stuttered. They what? Withdrew it. 10 minutes ago. They're also requesting a private settlement conference. Why? Brandon grinned. Because you just made their case radioactive. No jury's going to side with Christopher after seeing those documents. They're cutting their losses. Robert sat down, tried to process. He'd just publicly destroyed 2 men's reputations, released evidence that would probably end their careers, painted them as criminals on national television. And the result was victory. Clean, unambiguous victory. His phone rang. Elizabeth. Robert answered. Did you see? I saw. You were perfect. I called 2 men criminals on live television. You called 2 criminals criminals. There's a difference. Robert laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity, the relief, the sheer improbability of any of this working. Thank you for everything. Elizabeth's voice went soft. You did this, Robert. Not me. You came back. You 4-1. We won. Partnership's official now. Yes, it is. Dinner tonight? Celebration? Absolutely. They hung up. Robert sat in his office, alone holding Michael's blue pen, thinking about the last time he'd felt this kind of certainty. 209. First investor meeting. Michael sketching batteries on a pizza box. Robert pitching a dream nobody believed in. 17 years later, the dream was still alive. Battered, scarred, but alive. Wednesday brought consequences. Good ones, bad ones. Mostly good. Stock climbed to 12% above pre-crisis levels, which meant Robert had just created $13 billion in shareholder value by firing 2 executives and telling the truth. Wild. 3 of the 5 engineers who'd resigned came back. Dallas office resumed normal operations. Kellent accounts stopped requesting. Continuity meetings. The company exhaled, started breathing normally again. But Wednesday also brought Christopher's formal surrender. His attorneys requested a settlement conference, offered to drop the wrongful termination suit in exchange for Robert agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. Kenneth Lee called at 2 p.m. They're scared. Your press conference worked. Christopher knows if this goes to trial, he's facing federal prosecution. He wants out. What are the terms? He drops all claims, agrees to never work in energy sector again, pays back the $47 million from shell companies. You agree not to cooperate with federal prosecutors beyond providing documents. Robert thought about it. No, I'm cooperating with federal prosecutors regardless of what Christopher wants. He committed fraud. That's not negotiable. Kenneth's voice went cautious. Robert, if you refuse settlement, this goes to trial. Ugly. Public. Could drag on for years, then it drags. Christopher doesn't get to buy his way out of consequences. You're sure? Completely. Kenneth sighed. I'll inform his counsel. Robert hung up, felt zero regret. Christopher had spent 11 months trying to sell Williams Energy for parts. He didn't get redemption. He got justice. Different thing entirely. Tuesday night dinner with Elizabeth turned into something more than celebration. They met at her house in Palo Alto, Victorian, blue paint, front porch with a swing, completely unexpected. Robert had assumed Elizabeth lived in some minimalist tech bro palace. This was the opposite. Warm lived-in real. She answered in jeans and a Stanford hoodie, hair down, no makeup, looking nothing like the CEO who terrified competitors. Looking exactly like someone Robert wanted to know better. You found it. GPS is a miracle. She pulled him inside. The house smelled like garlic and wine and something baking. Elizabeth led him to the kitchen. Wine glasses already poured, pasta sauce simmering, music playing softly. Jazz. Miles Davis? You like jazz? Elizabeth handed him a glass. Tom got me into it. Took me years to appreciate. Now I can't cook without it. She stirred the sauce, tasted it. Added salt. How's Emily? Suspended. Unrepentant. Possibly my favorite person. Elizabeth laughed. She punched Kimberly Clark right in the cafeteria. Witnesses said it was surprisingly accurate for someone with no training. Too good for her. That's terrible parenting advice. I'm not her parent. I can be a bad influence. They ate dinner at a small table overlooking the backyard. Pasta, salad, fresh bread. Conversation flowed easy, work. Emily, Elizabeth's niece, who was applying to MIT. The absurdity of being in their late 40s and still figuring out what happiness looked like. At 9:30, Elizabeth poured more wine, led Robert to the living room. They sat on the couch close, but not touching. Elizabeth broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Always. What do you want this to be? Robert's brain stuttered. Classic Elizabeth. No subtlety, just direct questions that demanded honest answers. I don't know. I haven't dated anyone since Sarah. I have no idea what I'm doing. Elizabeth's expression softened. Neither do I. Tom died 6 years ago. I threw myself into work. Built Jones Solar into a company that terrifies competitors. Became the Iron Lady everyone respects. And nobody approaches. She paused. Then you walked into your own building in an old suit and fired 2 executives, and I thought, that's a man who understands what it means to fight for something that matters. Robert's voice caught Elizabeth. I'm not asking you to have answers, Robert. I'm asking if you want to figure this out together. Whatever this is. Robert looked at her, really looked, saw the CEO, saw the widow, saw the woman who was brave enough to ask for what she wanted without apology. Yes? Yes what? Yes, I want to figure this out. With you? Elizabeth smiled, kissed him, slow, deliberate. Nothing rushed. Nothing uncertain. Robert kissed back. The foundation was there. Trust, respect, chemistry. Whether it became love remained to be seen. They stayed on the couch until midnight, talking, kissing, building something neither of them had names for yet. Robert drove home at 12:30 a.m., smiling the entire way. Thursday afternoon, Robert got a call he'd been waiting for. Anjnal number. He answered. Williams, Mr. Williams. This is Agent Sarah Chen, FBI White Collar Crime Division. I'm calling regarding Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez. Robert sat up straighter. I'm listening. We've reviewed the evidence you provided to the Securities and Exchange Commission. We'd like to interview you formally. Can you come to our San Francisco field office tomorrow morning? What time? 9 a.m. I'll be there. Friday morning, Robert sat across from Agent Chen in a windowless conference room. She was 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes, placed a recorder on the table. Mr. Williams. For the record, did you or anyone acting on your behalf solicit, encourage or participate in the fraud committed by Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez? No. Did you have any knowledge of the Continental Fossil Holdings acquisition negotiations prior to receiving the anonymous email? None. And you can verify that the documents you released at the press conference are authentic copies from company servers? Yes. Brandon Flores. My assistant CFO can provide chain of custody documentation. Agent Chen made notes. Mr. Williams. Based on our preliminary investigation, we're prepared to bring federal charges against Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez for securities fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. We're also investigating Continental Fossil Holdings CEO Marcus Blackwell as a potential co-conspirator. Robert's pulse kicked up. Timeline? Formal indictments within 30 days. We'll need you to testify if this goes to trial. I'll testify. Agent Chen smiled small, professional. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Williams. And for the record, what you did took guts. Most founders would have settled quietly. I'm not most founders, no. You're not. The news broke at 3 p.m. Federal prosecutors announced charges against former Williams Energy executives. Robert's phone exploded. Congratulations from board members. Interview requests from media. One text that mattered. Elizabeth, justice served. Proud of you. Robert smiled, typed back. Couldn't have done it without you, liar. But I appreciate the sentiment. Dinner tonight? My place again? Yes. Thursday afternoon brought a call Robert wasn't expecting. School Principal, Boulder High School, Mr. Williams. This is Principal Hendricks. I'm calling about an incident involving Emily. Robert's blood pressure spiked. What happened? Emily and Kimberly Clark were involved in a physical altercation during lunch period. Both students are suspended pending disciplinary review. Robert's hands curled into fists. Define physical altercation. Kimberly made a comment about your press conference. Emily responded. The situation escalated. Witnesses report Emily struck Kimberly. Robert closed his eyes, counted to 5. What did Kimberly say? That's not relevant to. It's extremely relevant. What did she say? Hendricks paused. According to witnesses, Kimberly said, and I quote, "Your dad's a corporate bully who destroys people on TV because he can't handle business like an adult." Robert's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached, and Emily responded, how? She told Kimberly that her father was protecting 4,000 employees from criminals. Kimberly laughed, said you were just a failure trying to stay relevant. Emily punched her, despite everything. The suspension, the violence, the absolute inappropriateness. Robert felt a surge of pride. His daughter had defended him, poorly. But defended him. I'll be there in 2 hours, Mr. Williams. We need to discuss. 2 hours. Robert hung up, grabbed his keys, drove to Boulder faster than was legal or smart. Principal Hendricks' office smelled like stale coffee and institutional disappointment. Emily sat in a chair outside, backpack at her feet, arms crossed, defiant. She looked up when Robert entered. Before you say anything, we'll talk in the car. Hendricks opened her door, Mr. Williams. If we could discuss. Robert cut her off. My daughter defended herself against a bully who's been harassing her for 3 weeks. I have documentation of every incident. If you want to suspend Emily, fine. But Kimberly gets the same suspension, or I'm filing a formal complaint about your failure to address ongoing harassment. Hendricks blinked, Mr. Williams. 3 weeks. I have screenshots. Timestamps. Witnesses. Kimberly Clark called my daughter failure daughter repeatedly. Posted defamatory content about our family online. Made Emily's life hell because her father had the audacity to grieve publicly. Robert's voice went cold. You did nothing. So Emily handled it herself, badly. But I understand why. Hendricks sat back, recalculated. Both students will receive 3-day suspensions. I'll also be meeting with Kimberly's parents to discuss the harassment allegations. Good. We're done here. Robert turned. Emily followed. They walked to the parking lot in silence, got in the car. Robert started the engine. Didn't pull out, just sat there. Emily spoke first. I'm sorry. For punching her or for getting caught? Both? Robert looked at his daughter, 16 years old, suspended from school, defending her father's honor with violence. Sarah would have been mortified. Also secretly proud, Em. I appreciate you defending me. But punching people isn't the answer. I know, do you? Emily's voice went quiet. She said you were a failure, Dad. That you ruined people's lives on TV because you're bitter and washed up and can't compete anymore. Her eyes went glassy, and I snapped. Because you're not a failure. You came back. You fought. You won. Robert's voice caught. You can't hit people who say mean things about me. I know. I'm serious, Em. I know. She wiped her eyes. But it felt really good for like 3 seconds. Robert laughed. Couldn't help it, yeah. I bet it did. They drove back to Boulder in comfortable silence. Emily turned on music. Some artist Robert didn't recognize. Lyrics about fighting and surviving and refusing to apologize. Seemed appropriate. At home, Emily went straight to her room. Robert made dinner, pasta, salad, garlic bread, the basics. Emily appeared at 7. Can we talk about something? Always. She sat at the kitchen table, picked at the salad. Are you and Elizabeth dating? Robert froze mid-bite. What? Elizabeth Jones. The woman you kissed. The one you signed a partnership with. Are you dating? Robert set down his fork. We're figuring it out. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. We had dinner twice. We kissed. We signed a business deal. I don't know what we're doing. Emily studied him. Do you like her? Yes. Does she like you? I think so. Then you're dating. 16-year-old logic. Infuriatingly simple, probably accurate, Em. It's complicated. She's my business partner. We're both rebuilding our lives. There's a lot of, Dad. Mom died 8 years ago. You're allowed to be happy, Robert's voice caught. Emily continued, relentless. You spent 5 years being sad, which I get. Losing Mom and Uncle Michael. That's brutal, but you're not sad anymore. You're fighting again. Building again. Living again, she reached across the table. Took his hand. Elizabeth makes you smile. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about her. Don't screw it up by overthinking. Robert squeezed her hand. When did you get so wise? I had good teachers, your mom, both of you. They finished dinner. Emily did homework. Robert sat on the porch watching the sunset over the Rockies, thinking about Sarah, about Michael, about the blue pen in his pocket and the partnership agreement on his desk, and the woman who made him smile for the first time in 8 years. His phone buzzed. Elizabeth, how's Emily? Suspended for 3 days. Punched a bully. I'm not sure whether to ground her or applaud. Both seem appropriate. Agreed. Dinner Friday? My place. I'll cook. Robert hesitated. Dinner at Elizabeth's place felt like a line. Once crossed, no going back. He typed, what are you making? Does it matter? No, then say yes. Yes, 7 p.m. I'll text you the address. Robert put the phone away, smiled. Emily was right. He was dating Elizabeth Jones. And it was terrifying, and it was wonderful, and it was exactly what he needed. The following weeks blurred together. Robert and Elizabeth's teams met daily. Integration plans, technical specifications, revenue models. The Williams-Jones partnership wasn't theoretical anymore. It was real, tangible happening. Month 4 brought the first prototype. Austin, Texas. CT block powered by integrated solar battery system. Robert stood in the control room watching real-time data. Elizabeth beside him. Brandon and Linda Brown analyzing efficiency metrics. The system worked, not perfectly. But it worked. 92% storage efficiency. Linda's voice carried excitement she was trying to hide. That's 3% better than our projections. Elizabeth grinned. My panels are overperforming. Your panels are adequate. Our batteries are doing the heavy lifting. Robert watched them banter. Engineers. Competitors turned partners. Building something neither could build alone. Michael would have loved this. His phone buzzed. Emily, Dad. Got my college acceptance letters. Stanford, MIT, Caltech. All 3. Robert's chest swelled. That's amazing. I'm so proud, thanks. Also, Elizabeth called me yesterday. Offered to write a recommendation letter for Stanford's environmental science program. She did? Yeah. She's cool. Don't screw it up. Working on it. Robert pocketed his phone. Looked at Elizabeth. She was watching him. Everything okay? Emily got into Stanford. Elizabeth's face lit up. That's wonderful. She mentioned you called her. I did. Hope that's okay. She's brilliant. Deserves every advantage. Robert's voice went soft. Thank you. For what? For seeing her. For caring. Elizabeth stepped closer. Robert, I care about both of you. That okay? More than okay. They stood in the control room. Engineers working around them, data flowing across screens. The future arriving 1 kilowatt at a time. Month 7 brought the trial. Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez, Federal Courthouse, San Francisco. Robert testified on day 3. Prosecution called him to the stand at 10 a.m., Mr. Williams. Please state your relationship to the defendants. I co-founded Williams Energy Systems with Michael Johnson in 2009. Christopher Hernandez and Daniel Lopez joined the company in 2012. I appointed them CEO and COO respectively in 2019 when I stepped back from daily operations. And when did you first learn of their fraudulent activities? Tuesday evening, approximately 8 months ago. I received an anonymous email containing documentary evidence of their plan to sell Williams Energy to Continental Fossil Holdings. What did you do with that information? I verified its authenticity, flew to San Francisco, observed the company culture firsthand, then invoked Section 17 of our corporate charter to terminate both defendants and reassert control. The prosecutor walked him through the evidence. 22 documents, Timelinen, Christopher's compensation package, Daniel's board appointment, shell company transfers, R&D sabotage. All of it, defense cross-examined for 2 hours. Tried to paint Robert as vindictive, emotionally unstable, acting out of grief rather than evidence. Robert stayed calm, answered every question, never raised his voice. The jury watched, evaluated. Decided verdict came on day 12. Christopher Hernandez. Guilty on all counts. Daniel Lopez. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing 3 weeks later. Christopher. 7 years federal prison. Daniel. 5 years federal prison. Continental Fossil Holdings CEO. 9 years separate trial. Robert stood on the courthouse steps afterward. Reporters shouting questions. He spoke briefly. Justice was served. I'm grateful to the prosecutors and the jury. Now we move forward. That was it. No gloating. No triumph. Just closure. Emily was waiting at home when he got back to Boulder that night. You did good, Dad. We did good. All of us. She hugged him. Uncle Michael would be proud. Robert's eyes stung. Yeah, he would. The anniversary of Robert's return arrived without ceremony. He woke in his Boulder cabin, made coffee, watched the sunrise. 1 year since the anonymous email. 1 year since he'd walked into his own building as a stranger. 1 year since everything changed. The company was thriving. Stock up 40% from pre-crisis levels. Williams-Jones partnership producing integrated systems in 12 cities. R&D fully funded. Culture rebuilt. 4,000 employees who believed in what they were building. Robert's phone buzzed. Elizabeth, happy anniversary. 1 year since you stopped hiding. Robert smiled. 1 year since you helped me remember how to build. Dinner tonight? Your place or mine? Yours. I'll bring wine. It's a date. They'd been dating for 11 months, exclusive for 8. Elizabeth had met Emily a dozen times. Emily approved enthusiastically. Robert hadn't proposed, wasn't sure he was ready. But he was happy, actually happy. For the first time in 8 years, that afternoon Robert drove to the Williams Energy office, not San Francisco headquarters, the new Boulder research facility. David Coulter Memorial Lab named after Michael, built 6 months ago. Robert walked through the building. Engineers working on 7th-generation batteries. Efficiency improvements. Cost reductions. Innovation, the thing Michael had died believing in. Robert stopped at the memorial plaque in the lobby. David Coulter Memorial Laboratory. In memory of Michael David Johnson, 1973 to 2018, co-founder, Williams Energy Systems. Build things that matter. Robert pulled Michael's blue pen from his pocket, held it, didn't cry, didn't need to anymore. Michael wasn't gone, not really. He lived in every battery they built, every patent they filed, every engineer who showed up believing renewable energy could save the world. Robert pocketed the pen, walked to his office, sat at his desk, opened his laptop, started sketching. New design, 8th-generation prototype, higher density, lower cost. The work continued, always, because that's what builders did. They built, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Robert's phone buzzed, doxed from Emily. Dad, just registered for fall classes at Stanford, environmental science major. Thanks for not giving up. Robert's throat tightened. Thanks for reminding me how. He set down the phone, picked up the pen. Michael's pen started drawing. The future waited. And Robert Williams was ready. Not running anymore, not hiding. Building, always building, because some things were worth fighting for. Some legacies were worth protecting, and some promises were worth keeping. Even when they terrified you, especially then. Robert smiled, kept sketching. The work wasn't done, it never would be. And that was exactly how it should be.